Hello, everybody. We have a problem in the UK with activist judges. They are people who are appointed by an opaque committee that appoints judges in England and Wales. It's a different system in Scotland and Northern Ireland, but I imagine it's equally opaque there. But activist judges are imposing two-tier justice in the UK, and that is very obvious. And the person that we all know about now is Lucy Connolly. She's not the only one, but she is one of the most well-known victims of two-tier justice. Sentenced to 31 years, not 31 years, sorry, 31 months in prison for a social media post. Now, the social media post wasn't pleasant. I know. It said, in the aftermath of 3 young girls being killed in Southport, I don't care what happens to migrants and so on. That's what she said in her post. Wasn't nice, but she was responding to a horrific event, and she herself had a horrific event personally in her life where her child was killed in a botched procedure by a migrant doctor. So it's not surprising that she doesn't have any love for the policy of mass rapid replacement migration, which is happening in the United Kingdom. It is utterly repugnant that someone can be sent to prison for 31 months for a simple social media post, which wasn't actually inciting violence. It was expressing an opinion in the manner of, I don't care if this happens. Whereas we have people who have done real crimes who have been basically let off with a slapped wrist. One of the most well-known examples of this, of course, is the former BBC news presenter Hugh Edwards, who was found guilty of having numerous pictures of children on his phone. You understand what I mean by that. Who was given a suspended sentence. He didn't even do a single day in jail. Then you have the Labour MP, Mike Amesbury, who was videoed punching a constituent into the ground. Obviously, he was brought before the courts. He was not remanded in custody, however, unlike Lucy Connolly. He was bailed, arrested, questioned, and bailed, went to the court hearing. He was sentenced to a 10-week prison term. But then after a few days, another judge let him free. So he served about 2 or 3 days in prison. Unlike Lucy Connolly here, of course, I should have put the picture up earlier of her, but she was not bailed. She was arrested almost immediately. She was remanded in custody. And what I understand from this was a terrible time after the Southport murders by this son of a migrant. And people who had expressed opinions about this on social media were deliberately denied bail and held on remand at the request of the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, and other people in the government. Normal procedure would be to bail someone like Lucy Connolly, who just said something wasn't really a crime. It's only a crime because of these repugnant laws that have been put in place over the last 5 or 10 years that agitate against free speech. If she'd done what she did in America, there would be no question of even arresting her. She would be completely free to say anything she wants as long as she's not inciting violence. But of course, Lucy Connolly there was not bailed. She was held on remand. As far as I know, the duty solicitors were encouraging people to make a deal, to plead guilty, so they would not have their cases elevated to the Crown Court, where they may have been given prison sentences of 5 to 10 years. So she pleaded guilty on the basis that a magistrate would only sentence her to 2 or 3 years in prison, and she might only serve half of that time, might only serve a year and a half. But that's still utterly tyrannical and draconian. Two-tier justice against people for expressing something on social media. And the post that she put up, she took it down after 2 hours. Hardly anybody saw it. And then you have someone who's actually had pictures of children on their phone, someone who's actually punched someone, caused someone to fall to the ground with a one-punch knockout. And you know, how often do the government tell us one-punch knockouts can kill someone? And here's one of their own people who's done it, and they get 2 or 3 days in prison. And then, of course, most recently here, we have this person who has been he was suspected and has been arrested after allegations of child sex offences and rape. And he was another person that was arrested, questioned, and bailed. He's walking free now. He will have a court date in the future, but until his court date comes up, he's on bail. Yes, okay, he might have to go to report to the police station once every 2 weeks, but he's free to still see his family, still go about his business. He's still an MP. Yes, he's been suspended from the Labour Party, but he's still an MP, and he's still got the right to go to the House of Commons and vote when legislation comes up for voting in the House of Commons, even though he is an alleged sex offender, child sex offender. This is two-tier justice, and it is being imposed by activist judges who have no accountability. You see, in the United Kingdom, unlike the United States, there's no way of impeaching a judge if they do the wrong thing. They make the laws, or they interpret the laws, and they actually make case law, which is very important. Parliament makes legislation that's interpreted by the judges, and the judgments they make, especially in the first case, which tests a new law that sets a precedent, the judges actually make the case law. So it's important that we have judges that are impartial and are not imposing two-tier justice. But many of the judges we have been thoroughly soaked in cultural Marxism and Fabianism. They're far-left activists who, like Alinsky says, Saul Alinsky, in the seminal book for activists, left-wing activists, Rules for Radicals, says the true activist will put on a suit and tie, work their way through the institutions, get into positions of power, and then will impose the system and undermine a country, a nation, or the democratic system from within. And that's exactly what activist judges do. Yes, you see all these people, the great unwashed, who go out on the streets and shout with Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil and Black Lives Matter and all that. And that's dangerous. That's bad, of course, because they cause all kinds of trouble on the streets and violence and criminal damage, and they make people afraid, and they cause division and so on. But the real activism is done by very, very intelligent people, but who are wickedly, evilly, that's not a real word, nefariously intelligent, who get into positions of power in political parties, in the media, and in the judiciary. We need to get rid of activist judges. The first thing we need to do is undo all of the damage that Tony Blair did to the Constitution. Because before the Constitutional Reform Act of 2006, judges were appointed by the Lord Chancellor, which was a position in the House of Lords that had existed for 1,000 years in this country, in England anyway. And then obviously after the Acts of Union in Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland as well. That was abolished by Tony Blair in favour of setting up a Supreme Court to take over some of the functions done fairly and without prejudice by the House of Lords, and also to set up opaque committees which appoint judges on the basis of their allegiance to the agenda of diversity, equality, and inclusion, which is why you get all of these repugnant judgments coming down from activist judges, including harsh sentences against Indigenous people, English, Scottish, Welsh, and Northern Irish people for expressing their opinions on social media, while they let off people, their own people. And I'm sure some of them are in the 33 Club. If you know what I mean by that. I'm sure you know what I mean. And also the clients of those people, the cabal in power, such as the people coming to enact replacement migration, and many of them get let off with hardly any sentence at all for violent crimes. It's absolutely repugnant. It needs to stop. The Heritage Party will stop it, and we'll restore true equality before the law and undo everything that allows activist judges to undermine that, and we will end the era of two-tier justice.